Red wine is a type of wine mainly made from black grapes and musts. Every year, 24 billion liters of wine are drunk around the world. It's the same amount of water that falls over Niagara Falls in 2 hours. But to produce this incredible volume of wine, winemakers have had to resort to traditional techniques and improve them. This winery produces a Yellowtail, one of the best-selling wines in the world. It produces around 150 million bottles a year. We are in New South Wales, Australia. It may not be as famous as Bordeaux, but this city is at the heart of one of the world's most famous wine regions. A few kilometers to the east are the huge Casella plant, one of the largest wine plants in the world. Here they store enough wine to give a bottle to every inhabitant of the United States. To get such an amount of wine, you must start by having a huge number of grapes. In January, the harvest begins. The first task is to check if their harvest is ripe. To do this, they examine the color, maturity, intensity of flavor, and amount of sugar. But the only way to check if they are ready is to try them. The color of the grape is very intense, and the seeds are beginning to darken and thus acquire good tannins. They will be picked up in about 10 days. The most famous grape in the world is the Cabernet Sauvignon. Every year, Luc and his colleagues harvest almost 170 square kilometers of vineyards. They would need an army to pick up so many grapes by hand. Instead, he uses a battalion of grape pickers that do that work of 200 people. Pneumatic pumps lift the ton-10 machines to the height of the vineyards. Then they eat the grapes for breakfast. As the machine advances, the 14 hidden fiberglass springs inside vibrate 4 times per second. Enough power to pull the grapes off, but delicate enough to leave almost all the grapes intact. When the grapes fall, they are collected. They pass through the machine and end up in a basket, passing from the harvester to a container pulled by a tractor with the help of a conveyor belt. When the container is full, it is removed, and the 6-ton load of grapes is emptied into a truck. At this time of year, the harvesters work long hours of the day to pick the grapes when they are at their perfect ripening point. Working as a team, the colleagues and the tractor driver collect up 200 tons of grapes in one shift. When the truck is full, it takes its load to the winery. During the harvest, up to 6,000 trucks arrive here from vineyards even 1,000 kilometers away, and each one must be inspected so that all the lots are ready to the next phase. For this task, they need a suction pump like this one. When the steel tube is submerged, it sucks a juice sample that is used to analyze the acidity, sugar content, and chemical compounds called phenols that determine the taste and color of the wine. Now, a race against the clock begins. At an average temperature of 30 degrees during the Australian summer, the grapes will soon spoil. In times past, the harvesters would take off their shoes and start stomping them. Today, they use giant machines, each one capable of crushing 100 tons of grapes per hour. In peak season, more than 150 trucks a day empty up to 7,000 tons of grapes into these machines. The rotating troughs bring a full load of grapes to the press in 25 minutes, but they don't remove the pesky stems. These are removed by rotating shovels that separate them from the grapes. The stems are deposited on a belt under the press and accumulated in large piles. Now the grapes are divided to make white and red wine. All grapes have a translucent flesh, so both black and white grapes are pressed to extract the juice used to make white wine. The color and taste of the red comes from the phenols in the skin of the grapes. So the black grapes pressed with the skin are mixed and channeled to start the first phase of the red wine fermentation. This is where the expert winemaker Michael Slater takes the first sip of the day. Here, we looked for the potential of the wine. In this first phase, you already get an idea of the flavor it will have. It has character with a spicy touch. It's already good in this first phase. White wine is different. The skin contains tannins and other substances that affect the flavor and color. So these unwanted chemicals are removed in 16 huge presses. which together process more than 700 tons of grapes per hour. As it rotates, the inflatable bag inside the machines pushes the grapes against sieves. These remove most of the skin and only leave the sparkling juice to make white wine. And Michael serves himself the second glass of the morning. What is sought is that it has a fruity flavor, and that is why it is tested to see if it is balanced and has the sweetness that characterizes it. This is where a winemaker is seen. But this sparkling fermentation is far from being something that accompanies a fish. Any seed or particle of vegetable material is eliminated through these rotating vacuum filters. As they rotate, the vacuum absorbs the squeezed juice through a mesh. Any residue remains trapped in a filter that is around the drum. As it rotates, the waste is removed with this blade and separated. The juice is clarified and then channeled and stored to give way to the fermentation phase. White and red wine fermentation takes place in huge steel tanks, some with a capacity of more than 1 million liters. Yeast is added to each tank. The yeast feeds on the sugar in the grape juice and excretes alcohol, creating different flavors depending on the different types of grapes. During fermentation, it is important that the temperature of the white wine does not exceed 13 degrees and that of the red wine 24. The temperature is controlled by pumping each deposit from the tank full of cold water that functions as a giant refrigerator while the juice ferments. At the last stage of fermentation, the red wine still retains the skin. They are removed by machines called inclined strainers. Some skins can be added to the wine if the winemaker believes it needs more flavor. The remains are known as lees and are used in the animal feed industry or as fertilizers. Meanwhile, the filtered red wine is fermented again, and Michael serves himself the third glass of the morning. This is the next phase. Now, what is being fermented? You can see that the color is changing. It has a deeper red color, very good smell. It already has a lot of body and a lot of flavors. It has the stamp of a good wine. Now, the real art of good winemaking is missing: the blend. A single bottle of wine can contain grapes harvested from 3 different regions of Australia, fermented in different periods of time. People like Frank oversee combining them to create the perfect bottle that we will find in the supermarket. What is done here is to analyze several mixtures. We analyze them repeatedly to verify that we meet the expectations of the consumer. Once the mixture is finished, the ingredients are pumped from the tanks to the bottling change. The most expensive bottle of wine costs about €266. One of the best-selling wines in the world requires appropriate bottling technology. This company does it in the best possible way. It is one of the fastest on the planet, capable of filling 36,000 bottles per hour, and there are 3 chains in operation. The last phase is to get the bottles to consumers in 50 different countries. The boxes loaded with 672 bottles are taken out and loaded onto the trucks that distribute them. 12.5 million boxes of wine leave here every year. If you like the content, leave your like.